And this person has toiled quite a bit for this organization in its fledgling infancy, both with their own blood and sweat as well as their own personal fortune. This person could be counted on at a moment's notice to be able to do what needs to be done. And you're going to hear from this person in a moment what his committee does, and you're going to say, wow, you've done this as one person? And we're hoping as a result of today's work that we can get other folks that are interested in his type of work as well. I'd like to offer the inaugural Chairman's Volunteer Award to our Public Relations Committee Chairperson and Mr. All Things Media, Mr. Matt Erickson. Okay, so again, this is a very informal portion of the agenda before 1 o'clock, so if you do need to continue to take a break or partake of any of the refreshments, please do. But I think it is important, again, because a lot of folks were not familiar with what the RLCOH was, is to talk a little bit more about what it is that we accomplished in the last year without taking away from the committee chairman that you're going to be hearing from this afternoon. But some of the stuff has been coming across the screen here if you had a chance to read it. What we decided that we needed to do in looking at other state charters and what they've been able to do is to try and make sure that we had some product offerings as quickly as possible. We didn't want to just go out there and say, hey, give us $45 and become a member of an organization that does absolutely nothing yet. It made no sense whatsoever. So what this ragtag group of folks in this last year in this fledgling organization has been able to put together is nothing short of miraculous, given that we had no name recognition and nobody knew what the heck the RLCOH was. What we did starting this past year is, because this was an even year primary election this past spring, is that we hastily put together a program to actually recommend and endorse Republican candidates at the primary level. And we did that. We sent out hundreds of surveys. We took a look at everyone that responded to the surveys, as well as all the sitting legislators that were running again, and we came up with a Liberty Index for candidates. You're going to hear more about that from our candidate committee today. What we also put together was a legislative index, and our legislative committee chairman, who hosted the last panel here, you're going to hear from in even more depth here in just a few minutes about what that is. If you've not been to RLCOH.org and seen our legislative index, it has been held up by our national organization as the best in class for what any state is doing in holding their legislators accountable. The awards that Mike Newbern gave to Representative Brinkman and to Senator Jordan is the result of looking at hundreds of pieces of legislation, awarding those legislators that sponsor and co-sponsor the right legislation, as well as vote the right way. As Mike indicated, if you want to be a part of the organization that determines what bills we look at and score, he's going to walk through in a little bit that index. If you've never seen it before on RLCOH.org, he's going to actually walk through how it works, and if you've never seen it before, your jaw might hit the floor. This is what it is that the last panel was talking about as far as holding them accountable, and you'll get a chance to walk through that here in just a moment. We've had an opportunity to actually show up at events like those with the Ohio Liberty Coalition. I've been privileged to actually sit on panels before with Tom Zawistowski and others, kind of talking about the state of liberty. And one of the things that we are trying to do is what was talked about in one of these panels. We've got to get out of our echo chamber. We've got to become less about education and more about action. How many Liberty events have you been to where there have been phenomenal speakers? And I'm not saying we stop doing this. I'm not saying we stop having phenomenal speakers talk to us about the issues and dangers and opportunities that exist in the liberty movement. What I'm saying is that how much is that is just preaching to the choir? Wouldn't we be better off having speakers like the ones we had this morning talk about how to put that into action? Because there's a lot of assumptions we just need to start making that we're already singing from the same hymnal. Now it's time to get to action, and that's why the Republican Liberty Caucus of Ohio was created, is to actually do that. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't differences of opinion within the liberty movement. Kelly Sanders likes the term conservatarian, and I will adopt that today because I think that is what this organization is all about. It's conservatarian. Some of us are very much more leaning libertarian. Others of us are leaning much more conservative. But in the end, fully 80% plus of the issues that exist in our society we can agree on. Fully 80% of what needs to happen in order to move this country forward, we agree on. Whether we call ourselves conservative or libertarian, I've been calling myself conservatarian. And I think I'm going to continue to use that word. And so that's what this organization is about. If you've not been to RLCOH.org and looked at our statement of principles, taken a look at actually, if you want to find out what we're all about, take a look at the votes we've actually scored of all of our sitting legislators. And again, Mike is going to kind of maybe walk through maybe an example or two of those so you can kind of see the process that goes through it in doing that. It's very laborious. Why we need your help this afternoon is where to go from here. To this point, we have been a centralized state group in its infancy of just a handful of individuals. What we want to do is emulate the success of the Republican Liberty Caucus in states like Florida and Texas, who've built semi-autonomous local affiliates. Did you hear what Maurice Thompson was talking about with regards to find out what the heck is going on with regards to levies and what's going on with tax renewals and local income taxes and things of that nature, and that's where you can make a difference? That's why this organization was started. Our first year was to get us this far. Our next 2 years is to build strong local affiliates so we can impact things at the local level. If it's an issue of local importance, that local affiliate will be autonomous to be able to do what needs to be done. It also moves forward in some of the things that you heard, and we're going to talk more about. Anne's mentioned it briefly, and she's going to go into far more depth when it comes to county central committees. Again, can't do it at a statewide level. It needs to happen at the local affiliate level. So a lot of other states have had an awful lot of success with this. If you take a look at the Republican Liberty Caucus of Florida, they have regional affiliates, and in half of their regions, the Republican Liberty Caucus is stronger than the Republican Party Central Committee. And that's not a joke. If you want to be elected to office, either in the state legislature or a county commissioner seat or things of that nature, in half of Florida, you need to go to the Republican Liberty Caucus before you go to the state central committee, or you ain't getting elected. That's how much sway they hold over public opinion. Tom Zawistowski spoke about money. You gotta have money to get things happen. The Republican Liberty Caucus is a national 527, and each state is considered a chapter of that when it comes to actually how it's structured under the law. So we are a non-PAC 527. What does that mean? When you hear the term 527, you think PAC, money, right? We are a non-PAC 527. What that means is that your entry fee to today's event is not tax deductible. But what that also means is that we are not able to, within this group, to avidly campaign of anything of financial value for an individual office. So what we do is we educate on those Republican candidates and those legislators that are doing the right job so that individuals can then go and know where to put their money. So they can know and which individuals they want to walk the beat for. Eventually, what we want to do is to get into the actual 527 PAC business. The reason why it's wonderful to have somebody like a Tom Zawistowski here and others is that we don't need to be reinventing the wheel in some cases. Maybe our PAC becomes the We the People PAC, right? Maybe we don't create a Republican Liberty Caucus of Ohio PAC as a separate organization that is filed and can actually campaign for local candidates because it has to be filed with the state of Ohio, right? So that wouldn't be a 527, it would be an Ohio registered PAC, which is a whole separate animal. But we don't necessarily need to go that direction because those things exist. Our job as the Republican Liberty Caucus of Ohio is not to reinvent the wheel. The folks that you've heard talk this morning are already doing some phenomenal work. How are we different? Why exist? Why should you become a member of our organization? because we are just fighting it from a different front. Whereas other organizations are explicitly non-partisan, we are explicitly partisan. That doesn't necessarily mean we think the sun rises and sets in all Republicans, far from it. But what that means is that we have decided to definitively try and change the Republican Party from within. How many other liberty groups have you been to where they've basically said we want to stay nonpartisan, we don't want to feed into any partisan thing? That's fine. We complement that. We are not saying that is a bad approach at all. What we're saying is that we're going to tee up issues with you when it makes sense. And guess what? I hope that you'll tee up issues when it makes sense to come hang out with us as we try to change the Republican Party from within. Explicitly. That puts us in a very unique position when it comes to trying to seed candidates for central committees. Because we aren't hiding who we are. We're trying to do that very, very explicitly. So I wanted to give you that just kind of a little bit of a heads up of what the Republican Liberty Caucus is, because again, I don't blame anyone if they had never heard that name before. So the